Late night walk creep. So last night I was having a tough time falling asleep and decided to go for a walk to 7-Eleven so I could get something to drink. It was around 2 a.m. and I live in the city. Usually the walk takes all but 5 minutes, but the usually busy street was empty and there was a weird energy in the air. A little background on myself: I am a 21-year-old gay male, average build but nothing intimidating. As I was walking, a red SUV pulled up next to me. I kept calm, thinking maybe it's an Uber for someone, but then I noticed there weren't any stickers in the windshield. The car keeps driving next to me really slowly, and through the street lamps I get glimpses of this creep staring at me with this disgusting look on his face and in his eyes. I didn't show weakness or intimidation. Instead, I put my keys between my fingers and make an aggressive fuck off gesture. He doesn't budge. He's still driving next to me and staring me down. Then all of a sudden he drives away. I finally make it to the 7-Elevens and I have just a weird feeling about what just happened. I ended up spending 15 minutes in there, just prolonging my stay in there so I didn't have to go back out there. Eventually I calm myself down and decide to make my way back. I started walking back feeling fine, then I noticed that same red SUV parked in the parking lot next to 7-Elevens. He sees me and turns his headlights on and starts following me again, but this time he's blasting his horn at me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't run back to 7-Elevens, so I started running to my apartment, but I couldn't let him know where I live. Luckily there's 3 alleyways that can be used as shortcuts to get back to my apartment, so I dipped back into one, slowly sneaking my way back to the apartment. As I get to my door, my hands shaking trying to put the key in the door, the car drives past me again and I bust through my door. I wasn't sure if he saw me get into my apartment. My paranoia kicked and I locked all the doors, and as I was laying in bed I just stared at my door, didn't move positions, just laid there and stared until I passed out unknowing. I started lucid dreaming that I was still watching the door and eventually dreamed that he broke in and attacked me. It is the morning after now. I feel mentally exhausted, so creep, let's not meet. Creepy encounter during late night walk. A couple months back, I was up late playing video games. It was about 3:30 a.m. I had been playing for several hours at that point and started to feel restless from sitting for so long, so I decided I'd go for a walk. I live just outside of a relatively small and quiet town in Ireland, and being a grown-ass man in my 20s, I figured I didn't have any reason to fear being out for a walk this late at night, and have done so plenty of times in the past. I put on my jacket, grabbed my headphones and started out on my usual path, following the road outside of my house and onto a bypass on the edge of town. The air was crisp and refreshing, the road lit well from the street lights, and it seemed like it was going to be a pleasant walk. The bypass has a footpath on one side that's on a sort of hill, so it's slightly elevated from the road. Hugging the footpath is a small wooded area that's near pitch black at night. I was looking down at my phone contemplating what song I wanted to play next, when I noticed legs of a person whom I almost walked into. I was caught off guard since just moments ago I had been looking ahead of me and hadn't seen anyone at all. I glanced up to see an older man in a brown coat. He looked to be in his 70s and was a bit shorter than me, with an unreadable expression on his face. He says something which I barely hear through my headphones, but I thought I heard him say something like doggy. Assuming this man was simply out looking for a lost pet, I took off my headphones and said, "I haven't seen any dogs, sorry." He then repeats what he said. His voice was high-pitched with a strong accent, and I still couldn't make out what he was saying despite now lacking my headphones, but the final word became more clear. Daddy. I didn't know how to react to that. Part of me saw some humor in the scenario. I'm a third his age and he's asking if I'm his dad. The other part of me was a mixture of confused and uneasy. After a moment of confused silence I said, "No, do you need help finding someone?" I really wanted to just keep walking, but what if this clearly disorientated old man genuinely needed help? After another sharp inhale, he says, "Where's my daddy?" Still uneasy about this whole thing, I tell him I don't know and ask where he last seen whoever it is he was searching for. He pauses for a second, then points into the dark wooded area. I looked over where he was pointing, but it was far too dark to see anything. I start to think about how to proceed with this situation, when I noticed his face turn into a scowl as he grumbles something and he reaches into his pocket and takes out what looked like somewhat rolled up fabric. Upon closer inspection, however, I realized it was actually a small dead bird. He looks at it, grumbled again, then looks back at me. I was trying to decide if I should call someone or just go. All I knew was that I wasn't equipped to deal with this. I looked down to my phone, then, snap, a noise like a large twig breaking happens to my right in the wooded area, followed by a very distinct and human shushing noise. Every alarm in my body is going off now. I quickly say I don't think I can help you and start walking fast towards the town, which turned into a full-on sprint when I hear footsteps emerging from the trees behind me. As I reach the crossing, I glance back to see a hefty bald man guiding the older guy into the trees while staring over at me, the beam of a torch now piercing out from the wooded area. I cut through town and ran back home. Looking back, it's hard to say if I was in any actual danger, or if I just stumbled upon a mentally ill old guy who had got out of his house. I checked the news for a couple days afterwards to see if there was anything on a missing elder in my town, but came up with nothing. Haven't seen him since or heard anyone I know mention anything about a creepy old guy. Anyways, thanks for letting me share my weird encounter. If any of you are interested, I can go back to the bypass I was on and take some pictures of it so you can see where it actually happened. A night walk. I am female and would like to tell you about an experience that I had with my dog at the time. English is not my mother language, so I apologize in advance for any mistakes. It's been about 11 years. It was autumn and night and I decided to take a little walk around our housing estate with my dog Sunny. Sunny is a black and big Labrador mix. She is really good and cuddly, but she hates other female dogs. She also has a strong protective instinct and always snarls when she doesn't know or doesn't like someone or something. There were no street lights inside the settlement. The only lighting was always at the house entrances. There was a small park with small playgrounds between the rows of houses. But, as already mentioned, everything was in complete darkness. That's why Sunny was not to be seen, only to be heard now and then when she was chasing a rabbit into the bushes. Then it goes without saying that she wasn't on the leash. I only need this when other, female, dogs are nearby. Sunny listens to my word and always comes when I call her, so while I strolled comfortably through the dark settlement and froze my ass, Sunny ran happily through the area and the bushes. I always only guessed where she was, because I could not see her, only heard from time to time. At some point I noticed a small shadow that was whizzing around me. When I looked more closely, I could see Sunny. She ran in large circles around me and the place where I was, and I thought she was chasing something. But the circles she drew grew smaller and smaller. She didn't make any noise and I went on comfortably, because I thought she was having her 5 minutes. That's how it is said when someone is a little bit crazy, XD. My blood froze because it couldn't be a good thing. And then she started walking straight ahead, growling, about 2 or 3 meters, stopped, and at that moment I recognized a figure, completely in black. This person was shocked in front of Sunny and didn't move, and Sunny started barking like there was no tomorrow. The person slowly walked backwards, towards the lighted house entrances, and then I saw Sunny bare teeth in front of a young man, wearing a hooded sweater, and probably started to experience the same fears as I did when I noticed him. Because as close as he had sneaked up on me, he couldn't have had any good in mind. Since it was too dark, however, he could not see Sunny, and she must have surprised him at the right moment. Sunny started to jump, and at that moment the guy let out a scream and you could hear something falling from his hand on the floor. He ran and my dog followed. After I had released myself from my shock stiffness, I called out to Sunny as loud as I could, until after a short time she was standing in front of me again, wagging her tail. I took her on the leash and then went to where the guy had dropped something, and indeed, there was an arm-thick branch on the floor that he certainly didn't have with him to throw sticks. At home it gradually dawned on me that my Sunny did not have her 5 minutes when she circled me, but that she had long since noticed and kept an eye on this piece of SHT to protect me. On the one hand, that was creepy, but also a relief. I was and still am so grateful for this great dog.